Chris Sale and the Red Sox blow the lead to the Orioles in fall in Game 1 of the series.
You are Locked On Red Sox, your daily Boston Red Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
I want to welcome you back into the Locked On Red Sox podcast, and thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. I'm your host, Jake Ignaszewski. In today's episode, we are joined by a very special guest. His name is Nat Gordon, or it goes by Gordo over on Twitter. And Nat and I look into the Red Sox's loss in Game 1, break down Chris Sale's disappointing start, and also discuss Brayan Bello being demoted and who could potentially replace Chang if he's placed on the IL. Let's get into my conversation with Nat. I'm here with Nat Gordon, who goes by Gordo over on Twitter. So how we doing, Nat?
Iggy, how's it going, my man?
Doing great, man. Tough loss for the Sox, dropping it 5-4 in Game 1 against the Orioles. And it was unfortunate to see Chris Sale's struggles against the O's continue.
Yeah, I tweeted out before the game that this was kind of like I said it's an enormous start for Sale, and it could kind of have gone one of two ways. He was either going to show us that he's going to keep getting swing and misses. He's going to be able to limit runs. This Orioles team has hit him well before this game. They'd hit him like two or three straight times in a row, hit him hard. So this was going to be a big one. If he could have succeeded today, I think a lot of people would have bought in to the Chris Sale rebound. But I mean, it was not there for him. The slider wasn't biting at all. Stat Masters and Alex Spear had a good tweet. I think his horizontal break on that slider was down from like 30% today, and he had two swing and misses the entire day. It was the complete opposite of what we saw against the Twins. And I know Baltimore's offense is certainly better than Minnesota's, who I believe is still bottom 5. If they're not bottom 5, they're bottom 10. But yeah, I mean, he very clearly didn't have it start to finish. Like, you could feel it in the second inning. Like, even in the starts where he'd been getting hit, he was getting swing and misses. He was getting strikeouts. Like, that just wasn't there today. I really don't know what it was, but yeah, didn't have it today.
You brought up that slider, and I remember seeing a few pitches where his slider didn't even break; it just stayed on the outside part. And there was even one pitch I'm blanking on against who it was against, but it almost hit the batter in the face. And all I thought is putting myself in that Orioles batter's shoes. Holy crap! Even though Chris Sale isn't the old Chris Sale, seeing that angry face coming at you, at that arm slot, and coming super close to hitting you in the noggin. I mean, anybody would be scared up there.
Yeah, looking at that guy from the batter's box, like, it doesn't matter if it's prime Chris Sale or whatever we have today. It's not a fun time. Like, you can be a confident hitter, but seeing that guy, seeing that angry face, like you said, can't be easy.
And it's unfortunate, seeing what he did against the Twins. Only allowing 3 hits, striking out 11, and I had to joke about it a little bit by putting out a video of those highlights with the "Remember When" sort of song in the background, just reminiscing on the good times. But it's unfortunate seeing not only Sale but also Whitlock 2 games ago, kind of back and forth type of starts. Sale, obviously, against the Twins, shoved Whitlock, going 7 innings in his previous start before the last one. And now they're both sort of on the other end of, needing to rebound in their next start.
Yeah, no, you're right. It's kind of the same path for both of them. Both struggled 2 starts ago, had a good rebound last start, and then struggled in their most recent one. It's not going to be linear, especially for, a guy like Whitlock. I'm very heavily on the Garrett Whitlock as a starter train, and will be a starter train. But yeah, that development's not going to be linear for him, and it appears it's going to be the same for Sale. On the comeback trail, it's just not. He's not going to get it all together. He's not going to rip off 10, 15 straight great starts in a row like he used to. At least not yet. We're in this. Like, they're going to start games. Chris Sale is making $27 million this year, and his ceiling is obviously still very high. And they believe in Garrett Whitlock as a starter. Like, these guys are going to get chances. I definitely believe in Whitlock and Sale. I keep, I'm on and off with it, but like what they're not going to put him in the pen at least this early. He's going to get his shot. So we just gotta, as fans, just hope that he can throw out more starts like he did against the Twins.
And I guess you could say it makes it more fun to watch at times because you don't know what you're going to get from a guy like Chris Sale. 11 strikeouts his last start, 0 in this one. And especially with how many hits he allowed, it just didn't seem like he could get anything past these Orioles hitters. But I guess, from now on, for a lot of guys in this rotation, you kind of don't know what you're going to get from any of them, weirdly to say, other than Tanner Houck.
It feels like every day you have no idea. And every day feels like it's like, okay, like this could be a big start in this guy's journey. And I think I'll add Nick Pivetta into that with because Houck's been consistent. Pivetta, he can be up and down, but like at least with him, you kind of know what he is. Like with a guy like Whitlock, Bello, Sale, like I'll even throw Kluber into that because we really have no idea what he is anymore. Like these guys could go out there and they could throw 6 scoreless and you wouldn't be entirely surprised. And they could go out there and not make it out of the 4th inning, 5 or 6 runs. You wouldn't be surprised with that either. And you're right. It does make for an interesting game. It's not necessarily what we would pick, but they've got a depth of starters who can be good, may not be good every day, but they have a depth of big league starters. I'll give them that. It's not necessarily like elite starting pitcher depth, but they do have like a depth of solid starting pitchers who can get big league outs and can get a lot of them. It's just they're not going to bring it every single day because a lot of them aren't proven, a lot of them aren't super experienced, and a lot of them are experienced but are coming back from injuries and just aren't necessarily the guys they used to be.
And it's crazy to think that on, April 24th, we're talking about how the rotation is semi-overflowing at this point. You brought up Brayan Bello, and before we get too deep talking about this game, I also want to talk about, Bello being optioned down to Worcester prior to, this first game against the Orioles, and, lefty reliever Brendan Bardendino getting called up from the WooSox, who just recently got claimed from the Mariners last week. I was curious your thoughts on Bello being optioned to AAA. I knew it was an option, especially for the possibility that he could just be called right back up in a few days once his turn gets back around in the rotation. But what was your initial reaction when you saw that report?
Yeah, so the initial reaction was like, "Oh my god," because I on the Bradfo show I'd been talking about this with Coop and Sammy had brought it up as an option, and I was like, I responded with, I you're not wrong. I don't want him to be sent down because I think the best way to develop him, which I think the most important part of this year is like figuring out what you have and developing some of these younger pitchers to see what you have for future years. But so I think the best way to develop Brayan Bello is to keep him up here. But, he brought it up to me as an option and I couldn't totally refute it. So like, I knew there was a chance of it, but it still shocked me. And my takeaway after, reading Twitter and sort of taking some time to digest it, it feels to me like he's not going to be down for long. And Cora said he's going to be back. It feels to me like he could make his next start if someone goes down, and a lot of fans have talked about a potential like phantom IL stint for Corey Kluber if he has a rough start tomorrow. But if he doesn't, Bello can come back up in 15 days and he'll only have missed a couple of starts. So I don't think it's like he's going to be down for all that long. But I mean, when you see Brayan Bello, like a lot of the guy that I think most people would agree is the guy the Red Sox are highest on for this future rotation, at least. And, I think he's kind of the most important cog for the future of the pitching staff. To see him, optioned, obviously, a little bit of a shock at first. I'm curious, what like, how did you find out? What did you think?
I mean, I saw it and I immediately put out a tweet and, it sort of read of, it seems as though the Red Sox want Bello to spend more time in AAA after struggling in his first, 2 starts. And I sort of got the same sense from different people reacting to it and digesting sort of the reactions of, there is a possibility where it could come back. And this could just be sort of a depth move with, the limited amount of lefty arms that the Sox have. But to me, it sort of seemed like a very quick promotion for Bardendino, after only making, one appearance for the WooSox since getting claimed last week. And I think especially with, this Bello move sort of is similar to the Crawford demotion of just the shock of, wait, this guy didn't do that bad. Why are we, already demoting him down to Worcester? But I feel like maybe it's easy for us to read too much into this move and trying to speculate it. But, there's so many different avenues that I feel like the team could go right now. And especially from what we saw from Bardonito so far, in today's game against the Orioles, going 2 innings. Yes, he allowed 4 hits, didn't strike out anybody, didn't walk anybody, but didn't allow any runs. For a guy who, has relatively struggled thus far throughout this season, allowing, 11 runs, 8 of them earned over 8 innings thus far. He only allowed 10 last season over 32.2 innings. And especially being able to finish with a 2.20 ERA last year in AAA, might as well see what you got from him. I hope that you are enjoying my conversation with Gordo, but this show is sponsored by BetterHelp. So I don't know about you. I'm somebody who's always looking to learn more about myself, continue down my self-development journey. And if you're somebody who struggles with being able to figure out who you are as a person and are really trying to learn and deepen your self-awareness and understanding about certain situations and the way that you react to certain things, BetterHelp is the best way for you to get into therapy easily. I don't know about you. I've had some really good experiences with therapy, just being able to have somebody else to talk to about different situations or issues in my life outside of friends or family. And, it's always good to get an outside expert or outside advice to be able to help you think through different things. And so BetterHelp really connects you with a licensed therapist who can take you on a journey of self-discovery from wherever you are. And the biggest thing for me, anytime I'm looking for a therapist, is finding somebody who is close in proximity, good price, as well as being able to have it fit in my schedule. And something that's different from BetterHelp than any other place where you can get it set up for therapy is that it's entirely online. And that's designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited for your schedule. So just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. And I think that's another part that really scares a lot of people, is being able to switch their therapist and the whole process that goes through that. BetterHelp does a great job of helping you make that a very seamless process. So discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOnMLB today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnMLB. Now let's get back into my conversation with Gordo.
Yeah, and especially with the situation with the Red Sox roster and their left-handed pitching situation out of the bullpen. I mean, they've been rocking Richard Blyer and just Richard Blyer the entire way. And he's been up and down. He's definitely been better lately. It's been good to see that improvement. But one lefty out of the pen it's a tough line to teeter, because those situations present themselves multiple times in a game, several times in a series, and it's tough to rely on just one guy to do it. And I'm sure they see something in Bernardino they like. I mean, he, like you said, he pitched pretty well last year. He's got an interesting arm slot. The Sox seem to like to target those interesting arm slot kind of guys.
Ever since they struck gold with Schreiber, they've just been picking them out, bro.
Yeah, it seems like every reliever that they put the claim in for, it's an interesting arm slot, interesting delivery. Kind of hides the ball when he delivers. Stuff like that. I mean, he threw 2 scoreless today. It wasn't pretty, but they needed fresh arms up in the bigs. I know that's what this was about, because you saw it with the way Cora managed the game today too. I didn't think he should have brought Sale out for the 5th. I thought it was pretty clear he didn't have it, but it was clear their priority today was saving innings out of the pen. I mean, they've got guys like Winkowski and like Crawford who've been throwing a lot lately.
Right.
So I get what they're doing. I mean, like you said, this could kind of be like a Cutter Crawford situation, and another one it could be like is Tanner Houck. Remember in 2021 where they sent Tanner Houck to AAA and brought him right back up days later. It felt like 10 times that year. People just lost their minds at it, and it's tough as a fan to see it because you have no idea what the plan is, when in reality they're thinking, okay, there's a double header in a few days, we'll bring him up to do that, or someone might get hurt and we'll bring him up to do that, to replace that guy, because you can bring guys up quicker after injuries. And if all of that goes wrong, 15 days, then he's back. All he did was miss 2 starts. So I get it from their perspective. It's tough from our end of the stick, because all we see is Red Sox option Brayan Bello to AAA,
Right.
and they're hoping he can get more comfortable and command his pitches a little bit better, stuff like that. So
Right.
we're just left in wait and see mode.
I agree, and for those people who heard what I said about the Schreiber sort of comparison, the Sox wanting to claim all these different guys. Look up Skylar Arias, who's down in AA. Look up Joe Jenks, who's in AAA for Worcester, and then look up Bernardino's sort of arm slots. They're all the exact same. They're all the sidearm, sort of like Sale has. So Chaim Bloom said on ITM, I remember last year, we're trying to find more bullpen guys like John Schreiber. So I didn't expect, a carbon copy of the guy, but I guess whatever works. But the one thing that, popped up into my mind is, especially if Bernardino gives the Red Sox a little bit more of a multi-inning type of guy. He made, he pitched 2 innings, not only in his outing in Worcester, but also in today's outing against the Orioles. And now they have, Crawford, Winkowski, and Bernardino. And, when you look up Bernardino against a guy like Caleb Ort, we know Ort can't go 2 innings. And so the first thing that comes into my mind is, if you get into a position where Bernardino has been shoving for 4 days, Brayan Bello has the ability to be called up for a start. Who are you going to send down? Could we potentially see, do you think, a Caleb Ort send down and Bernardino stays if he's shoving?
Well, I've thought the entire year that the way they've been using Ort is, we're just going to get as many innings out of this guy as we can now, and we'll option him at some point when guys get healthy. Wyatt Mills, I know he just got placed on the 60-day, but I think, guys like him will come back. Joely Rodriguez, I know through
Wyatt Mills is another guy who has the same arm slot as Schreiber too.
Yeah, there's another one. Yeah. All of these. Yeah, that's very clear pattern. But yeah, like when he and Joely Rodriguez and Chris Martin, I heard is going to be back like this weekend. It was super quick. But when those guys come back, they're going to have to send guys down, and Caleb Ort has options. They've been using him a lot, and it's kind of the Rays model where you have like this dearth of guys who can go up and down throughout the year, and you can just kind of stagger their innings. He throws a ton of innings in April, and you kind of take it easy with him in AAA in May. He's back in June. He throws some innings, and then July he goes back down and takes it easy in AAA. It's an interesting strategy, and I know that it was they kind of wanted to target it this offseason. Like, that's kind of the message they sent when they DFA'd Matt Barnes, is that they kind of wanted guys that you could option. But yeah, I think that's the pattern we see with Ort. And I think it could be the same thing with Bernardino if he's able to stick on the 40-man. I know it's going to be a little bit difficult when guys come off the 60-day, but if he sticks around, like he'll be one of those guys too.
Yeah, I'm very curious to see how everything does play out specifically, with those decisions. But then, another decision with Chang, which we'll talk about, after we continue to recap this loss to the Orioles. But I wanted to focus on the offensive side. We saw Masataka Yoshida continue to swing the bat very effectively, looking extremely comfortable at the plate. Went 3 for 3 with 3 singles in this game, and is continuing his 5-game hitting streak. Obviously, we saw the 2 home runs in the series finale yesterday. And then we also saw Casas hit a homer as well. Hopefully that's a start for him. And then, Rafi smacks a 2-run home run as well.
Yeah, and I think the key there is Yoshida. I mean, he hit that home run in the 8th inning, or at least the first one in the 8th inning yesterday. And then he hasn't missed since. Hits a grand slam, gets 3 singles today and a walk, a really good walk, I might add. That walk in the 9th inning off a tough lefty, and basically every pitch he took was close, and he got a strike 2 call that should have been the first ball 4. So he took 5 tough balls against a tough lefty. He looks a lot more comfortable. He's taking, before he was driving a lot of pitches into the ground, particularly those up and away pitches. He was reaching around them and grounding them and rolling them over to second base seemingly every time. But what I've loved that we've seen him, especially today, he hit a few balls hard the other way. He was getting, I think he hit one, I think it was 111 miles an hour the other way for his first hit. Like, stuff like that. That's what we need to see. I mean, if he can, it's early. I really didn't foresee the breakout of Yoshida coming in April. But if it can, I mean, that would be really big for this team. They definitely need it, especially with some of their injuries they've had on the offensive side of the ball. That would be really big.
And I think he's going to go through his stretches, as we saw at the beginning of the year. I think everybody sort of expected that. But I agree with you, especially if he's able to get over this first speed bump. Now he already knows how to get out of it, at least from what we've seen in these last few games. And I think, the growing pains will happen throughout the year, like I said, but, being able to already have that experience. And I think that relationship with the hitting coach as well, of being able to find the key this early of why am I not lifting the ball? Why am I rolling the ball over seemingly every single time to second base? Because it seemed like pitchers started to figure him out a little bit, but now he's starting to figure out the pitchers, which is exactly what you want to see. And I feel like one guy that there's glimpses of him figuring out the pitchers, and then there's also glimpses of him not, is Triston Casas. And I hope, this homer is something that helps him, get hot.
Yeah, I mean, he's a confident kid, and you could tell when he hit it. I mean, he knew it was gone. He crushed the ball, and he admired it. And I want to see that from him. Like, you need that kid to be himself. Like, he's got to be, even as he struggles, he's got to be the confident kid that he is.
Mm-hmm.
How many games has he played at this point? I think he played like 25 last year, and we're about 20 in this year, and he hasn't even played all of those. So he's got to be like 40-ish games in.
Mm-hmm.
This is what happens with young kids. I mean, he's a really mature hitter, so I think expectations were high of him, and maybe it was unfair of us as fans because, like, I did it too. I think everyone did it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I saw a lot of 30 homer predictions for him, and I definitely had him in the mid 20s, and maybe that was a little bit unfair, but I have a lot of confidence in him to turn it around. He, like I said, is a really mature hitter. Bat to ball skills are good. His strike zone awareness is good. He's got power. Like, I feel much better about him watching him struggle than I have about some of the other prospects the Red Sox have brought up in the past as they struggle. Right. I think it's going to come. I don't know when it's going to be, but having watched baseball my whole life and seen a lot of prospects, I'll dig my feet into this kid. I really do believe the Casas turnaround is coming. I don't know if it's going to be soon, because outside of the homer, yeah, I don't know. Because did you see that Red Sox stats tweet today about Casas?
No.
I gotta pull it up. He had a chart of like all of Casas. It was before the game, so he kind of pimped the tweet a little bit after Casas hit the homer. But I mean, I'm not even sure I'm going to be able to say it on here because it's just a chart. But it's basically his batted balls have all been at the right launch angle with good exit velocity when he makes contact. He's been getting a little bit unlucky. I know early on, and I'm sure it's still pretty poor, but the BABIP was ridiculously low. I mean, I remember the first couple weeks into the season, it was in the low 100s. Like, wow. that type of BABIP is not sustainable. Like, he's going to turn it around. He will. I really do feel it, but we just got to be patient because he's a kid. This is just how it goes.
And, you brought up the confidence that he has up at the plate. And one guy who's been exuding confidence, it seems like, since the season has begun is Alex Verdugo, not only at the plate, but also in the field. And that catch that we saw in right field, unbelievable. And then the other person I got to give props to, Jarren Duran, making plays look easy in center field. Finally, though. Thank God.
Yeah, I can't talk enough about Jarren Duran. He has been spectacular. I mean, that catch today in center field, I don't think, at least in the majors, I don't think I've ever seen him make a play like that. That ball looked like it was hitting the gap. And when he's in center field, back in the day when we had Jackie Bradley roaming out there, like, you never know, like, maybe he's going to get there. But when Jarren Duran's in center, I mean, I think it's been pretty fair for fans to assume that those types of balls get down, but he was there. And, he's just so athletic that, I mean, when some of these instinctual things and, the first step, when those things come around and, they won't always be there, but when they're there, like, he's going to get to some difficult balls just because he's so fast.
Right.
And he's just been hitting the ball so hard every single time. I mean, I know he struck out on a high fastball today. I think he may have struck out twice. But overall, he has looked incredibly comfortable. That lefty on the Brewers, Hobie Milner, they brought him in just to face Duran in that first game of that series, and he got that key single. And I was so impressed with that because it was an inside pitch against a tough lefty. He threw a sidearm, kind of like all our guys do. And he got the single on that pitch in that key spot. And, that's just something we were not seeing from him either of the past couple of years at the big league level. So, I mean, props to him. He has really, really, really come a long way, like, big time.
And I think today was the only game since he's come up where he hasn't been on base. And I think, Cora, that's one thing that he pointed out to the reason why they even brought him up is when Duran's on base with that speed, not only the pitcher, but the rest of the team is, on their toes.
Yeah, and like when he blooped, it was like last week he sort of blooped the ball into, I think it was like left center or right center, and he stretched that single into a double, and it's like that's what this kid can do that no one
Yeah,
else can
I
do.
saw that. Yeah, that was unreal. Kevin Kiermaier used to do that for the Rays when he was like early in his career, and I'll never forget. My grandpa like said it to me like when we sat down for a game. He's like, "Watch this kid. He'll get on a little blooper. He'll get to second base." And right after he said it, Kiermaier did it, and
That's
it
awesome.
gave me flashes of like that with Duran too, and especially with that ability. Like I said, not every player can do that, and the Sox need that speed right now.
Yeah, and he's got all those tools. He's incredibly strong. He's incredibly fast. Like he can do it all. It's just once he puts the rest of it together. I mean, he could be a guy. Like I'm trying so hard not to buy fully in because I've done it twice and it's burned me twice.
Yeah,
But it's just so
I
hard
feel
when you watch him play, and when he plays well, it's hard not to love watching him because I mean, oh my god, when he plays well, I mean the power's there, the speed. When he gets on base, he makes a difference on every single pitch, whether he's running or not. Like he just makes a difference in the pitcher's mind.
But I like what we're seeing this time around is that he's not trying to show off that power like it seemed like he was trying to do last year. Show off his guns. Obviously he's a little bit bigger this time around, but he's doing a lot better at kind of like Verdugo is focusing on just getting on base, whether it's through the walk or whether it's just through those line drive singles or bloop singles or sometimes made into doubles. And I think as well being able to have all these different pieces of young guys who at this point are flourishing. This time last year, or at least later on in the year, it was like, what pieces do the Red Sox have for the future? Like, what is this puzzle going to look like, especially with all the free agents the team had going into 2023? And I was looking at the dugout in today's game and just thinking in my mind, there's a lot of exciting guys in this clubhouse. I hope that you are enjoying my conversation with Gordo, but I just want to take a second to talk to you about our next sponsor, So Rare. So it's a revolutionary fantasy baseball game and a marketplace transforming fans into owners with officially licensed digital cards featuring players from across all 30 MLB teams. It's unlike any other fantasy baseball platform, and So Rare managers truly own their fantasy experience, collecting, buying, selling, and competing with player cards against global opponents to win epic rewards. Win or loss, you still own your cards, and there's no cost to play. Plus, the more that you win, the more you advance. Collecting increasingly powerful cards and assessing next level competition and rewards. Another great thing about So Rare that really surprised me and made me want to get more involved is that MLB All-Stars Juan Soto and Julio Rodriguez are going to be serving as brand ambassadors, and both will be featured in So Rare's current brand campaign and will engage with So Rare community throughout the season at MLB events. And so if you want to check out So Rare and get involved and try a new revolutionary fantasy baseball experience, head over to sorare.com/lockedon. That's spelled SORARE.com to draft your team of free player cards, set your lineup, and start competing today to win epic rewards. Again, that's sorare.com/lockedon to start playing today. Now let's get back into my conversation with Gordo.
Yeah, yeah, you're right, and it's not something that we've always had the last few years. Even when they've played well, like the future, the prospect of the future has not, or at least the immediate future, has not always been bright. But now, I mean, has the thought of like when Adam Duvall comes back, if Jarren Duran keeps up this, like what do you do? Has that crept into your mind? Because like
A little bit.
I love those problems. I love that.
Yeah.
Like because it's like I love good problems to have because we're gonna talk about whether Duran and Duvall, like how they split time, how they both get every day at bats.
Mm-hmm.
When if in that scenario, Jarren Duran's like been raking for 2 months, and Adam Duvall, he's coming back, and we all saw what he did the first couple weeks.
Yeah.
Like
I think it's a toss up at that point. it's a toss up between Ref Schneider and Tapia. And then you got to look at Tapia signed on a minor league deal, and Ref Schneider's, was offered a major league contract through arbitration this past offseason. So I think you kind of got to go with Tapia essentially because you kind of got him for pennies on the dollar. And so being able to, potentially move him to another team for, a small piece. One thing that, I was thinking about a lot yesterday, and I know that we're talking about position players, but, you brought up Kluber and you brought this back into my mind earlier in the episode. I think that looking at the trade deadline, if the Sox are able to figure out a way to do like a Ryan or Jake Diekman for Reese McGuire type of trade with a guy like Corey Kluber or a guy like Ramel Tapia, just a sneaky underrated trade for a guy who isn't performing that great to a team who needs, a starter or an outfielder, I think that would be perfect to just get either of those guys off of our hands if, they're not, needed anymore, or if there's another guy to fill the spot that could fill it even better within, the organization.
Yeah, and just talking about Kluber, that's been a huge discussion point with Sox fans lately. I mean, a lot of people are like, DFA the guy, after 4 games, and there's a million reasons why that's not really possible. But yeah, I mean, at the deadline, if he can prove that he's not, I don't want to be mean, but just prove that you're not totally useless. If the Red Sox will eat some of that money, there will be a taker, because any team with injuries on the staff could use a guy, a professional pitcher who can come in and eat innings, and a guy that you're not necessarily married to long-term or anything, like just a guy who you won't pay very much money to if the Sox eat some cash, and he can come in and help you get through a period. He's not going to be there to make like playoff starts, but like you said, it's not like the Red Sox traded Jake Diekman and the White Sox thought they were getting rid of some blue chip player here. They were getting rid of their backup catcher who had multiple years in the bigs of not very much success, and he's come here and he's been one of the best hitters on the team since he got here. So
I think Carabas brought it up. He had the best batting average in all of baseball since getting traded to the Red Sox.
Like, what is that? How is that happening? I mean, that's the type of thing that, I mean, they just, I remember that trade goes down like Reese McGuire. Like, what? Where does that, like, why? And then, he's been great. And I'm a huge Reese McGuire proponent. I don't think he's as bad defensively as most Red Sox fans do. I think our catcher situation is actually pretty good.
Yeah,
like Connor Wong, his arm is just a cannon.
Somebody finally threw out an Orioles base runner today. Finally.
Yeah, Wong, it was an absolute laser. He had him by a mile. It was great.
Because the Sox didn't get anybody in that first series.
Yeah. I mean, I was so worried about the rules after that first series, because I figured, oh my God, like, these guys can't pick off. And so everyone's just gonna time it out and go. And if a pitcher throws over, they're not going to throw over again, because then if they throw over again, then they can't throw over a third time without a balk if you don't get the guy out. So I figured these guys would be running wild. And, it's actually been pretty refreshing. I like stolen bases. I want them to be up. I'm glad they're up. I just don't want it to be like you get on first and you're automatically on second. So I'm glad it's not been that. I'm glad the Red Sox have kind of settled that down. Connor Wong has been a big part of that. He's got a great arm. Like,
I agree. Thank God. And his bat's been doing good as well. And, bringing up stolen bases with Chang going down with pain in his wrist, Cora said that on Tuesday they'll look more into it, but they'll probably add somebody for, tomorrow's game. In my opinion, it's the guy who broke the record for stolen bases for the franchise last year, David Hamilton. I mean, he's hitting .338, 4 homers, 10 RBIs, and already has 11 stolen bases. I think you got to give him the shot over Valdez.
Yeah, I think I'm on board with you, man, because just simply put, he can play shortstop. I mean, obviously he does a lot of other things well. He's incredibly fast and, adds that dynamic. And it's been pretty clear this year how valuable having speed on your roster is. But I mean, if you bring up Valdez, you just ask yourself, or Bobby Dahlbeck for that matter, if you bring up one of those guys, who are you going to start at shortstop? Are you going to start Kike Hernandez after what we've seen? Is it going to be Christian Arroyo, or are you going to trust? You're not going to trust Valdez there. I wouldn't trust Bobby Dahlbeck playing there every day. So yeah, I think David Hamilton getting a couple starts here and there. Hopefully Chang's okay and it's not it's nothing worse than just a little bit of wrist soreness. I know like the broken hamate bone like happens on swings like that sometimes. So I'm a little bit worried that they're going to test it and find that, and then it's going to be a lot worse than it looks. But if it's just a short stint, short IL stint, then yeah, go for it. Like David Hamilton all the way. Bring the speed. He can defend, and he's hit the ball well in the minor leagues. So yeah, maybe he deserves that shot. He's on the 40 man. Why not?
And he's been hitting the cover off the baseball in terms of his power. We didn't see that a lot last year, and I work for the WooSox right now, and so being able to see that on display not only at home but also away has been unbelievable. And he's really impressed me with his ability to transition from AA to AAA seamlessly. And one anecdote for fans who maybe didn't tune into the interview that I had with the Sea Dogs play-by-play broadcaster Emma Tiedman. She mentioned that Hamilton is actually way better at second base than he is at shortstop. And I know that there's a lot of people who are like, why is he at shortstop for majority of the games in Worcester? You got to give time for Valdez to get used to time at second base as well. And a lot of people out there also were saying Jose Iglesias, the perfect fix for that. If Iglesias, isn't on the major league roster, then you got to put him down to Worcester, and then you're taking, reps away from Hamilton to continue to get used to, not only AAA talent, but continue to develop as well.
It's actually an interesting idea now that you bring it up, because Iggy just opted out of his Marlins deal. That's something they could do, is they could just sign him and just DFA him whenever Chang or anyone else can come back. I don't know what the deal with Mondesi is right now, but you just sign Iglesias for a couple of weeks if you want. But then I guess you got to open up a 40-man spot.
They did in 21. So
it'd be the same exact thing. Heim did it before. He's hanging around. I don't know. That's interesting. I mean, they'd have to find a 40-man. That's kind of the only issue there. I don't know. I'd be comfortable with Hamilton at least giving him a shot. And if he has 3 straight 0-for games and then you want to try Iglesias, then you give it a shot. Then you can kind of do what you want. You're like 10 shortstops deep. Like no one's gonna fault you for anything.
Yeah, I agree. And that's not a terrible problem to have, but when they're not major league ready or impact players at the major league level, maybe it's not always the best thing. And maybe now that we're looking at it, especially if Chang is sidelined for a good amount of time, knock on wood, this is a glaring issue that Chaim Bloom didn't get a viable person to fill in at that shortstop position outside of Mondesi, who we knew coming in towards ACL last year and wasn't going to be 100% ready.
Yeah, It would be fascinating to learn what they knew about him at the time of that trade. Because don't you remember, at the time of the trade, they were kind of, oh yeah, maybe he'll be ready for opening day. Probably not. I wouldn't count on that. But he shouldn't miss that much time. And now all of a sudden it's 60-day IL. Earliest he can come back is the end of May. I'd be really curious to know what they knew when that trade went down, because if there was any sort of indication that he was going to miss this much time, I
agree.
They've been lucky that Yu Chang has been able to step in and play such good shortstop defense, because it's really settled things down. When Kike was having a tough time there early in the season, it was making a big difference, and you could tell, and it was making a big. It was hurting his plate approach too. I mean, he just wasn't hitting, and as soon as they take him off shortstop, he starts hitting.
I think as well, especially with Chang, when you look at the batting average, it's just not holy crap, he's hitting the cover off the baseball, but he's had very timely hits. And, some of those home runs have come in big spots. And, even in yesterday's game, when it was close before, the Sox blew it open, he had, a clutch single as well, and a nice stolen base, his first of the season. And I think, looking at that trade, I bet if you asked Chaim Bloom right now, they won it with Josh Taylor, not making the 26-man roster for the Royals. They probably look at that as a win, even if Mondesi doesn't do anything for the Sox right now. But, looking at, what they've been able to do in April thus far, already winning more games than they did last season. And obviously, they're playing more games than they did last year due to, the delay of the season with the lockout. But I'm curious, is this sort of what you expected from this Red Sox team in April, or do you think they're playing better than you thought?
I just as a whole, if we're going to talk as a whole, this is kind of exactly what I've expected because they've kind of just been game above 500, at 500, game below 500, back to 500. They've just been kind of teetering that line. But if we're talking about from what I expected in April, I expected a little bit better in April just because of those first 9 games. Coming into the season,
Right.
you see Baltimore, you see Detroit. Was it Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Detroit? Yeah, it was Baltimore, Pittsburgh,
Yep.
Detroit. And you think, okay, like maybe they can take 2 out of 3 from Baltimore, and then they should definitely win both of the next series. So I'm thinking like they're going to get off to like a 6-3 start, and then like we'll see and like hopefully finish April, 4 games above 500, and give yourself some wiggle room to lose some games later on. The Pirates being really good definitely was not in my plans. Like I didn't think they were going to be the best team in the National League, 3 weeks into the season, but that's where we're at. That sweep is not looking quite as bad as it did at the time. But yeah, this is kind of exactly what I think they're going to be. And, maybe later in the season, if they can get healthy, particularly on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, right now, like coming into today, they scored the 3rd most runs in baseball. And, they don't even have 2 of their best right-handed hitters in the lineup. Like this is a team where you can throw left-handed relievers out at them. Like the Orioles did today. They had that guy throw an inning in a 3rd. Actually, no, he didn't get the first out of the 9th, so he only threw an inning. But yeah, teams will just do that. They'll throw lefties at us because all of our best guys are lefties in the late innings. If Devers, Yoshida, Verdugo are due up 3 out of 4, you'll throw a lefty there and take your chances. But later in the year when the lineup gets more balanced, Trevor Story is going to be one of the best hitters on this team when he's back, and hopefully Adam Duvall can be anything close. Like if he can just be like 30% of how good he was in the first week, then you've got a lineup there. Like that's a top 5 to 10 offense in baseball if healthy, especially if a guy like Casas gets it together.
I agree with you, especially with the offense, it's much better than I expected. As an overall team, it's generally how I expected it to be. But I think especially what you've been able to get from different guys like Crawford and Winkowski, it's definitely better than a better situation than you expected. Especially how they've been able to tread water with all the injuries that have just been thrown at them, and still found ways to get wins against teams like the Angels, Twins, and Brewers. Yes, the Rays series was a crapshoot, but at the same time, they're the best team in baseball, so you can't totally fault this team not being able to at least win a game against the red hot Rays. But overall, I'm just excited to not only see how they can finish out April, but how they're able to use April as a launching pad for May and June.
Yeah, and it's weird you sort of touched on this. But like even though like as an overall record they're 500, and that's kind of what a lot of us expected coming in, it's weird because the offense has been a lot better than I thought it would be. The starting pitching has been a lot worse than I thought it would be, and the bullpen has been a fair amount better than I thought it would be. So nothing like by itself has been what I expected, but we're still kind of at that same destination just because like the offense can score the 3rd most runs in baseball, but if the pitching has a bottom, I believe 6 ERA in baseball, like you're gonna be 500. You got a really good offense, you got a really poor pitching staff. That's where you're gonna be. But
I feel like this is just classic Sox.
Yeah, no, like the roster construction didn't look like it was going to be our same old Sox where they just hit a bunch and can't pitch. But maybe that's just what being a Boston Red Sox is, and maybe part of it's Fenway Park. I don't know, but
yeah, I thought Chaim Bloom was going to fix this, but we'll see. He's had some time in the roughs, but I bet most Red Sox fans thought he was going to fix the pitching problem. But luckily there's been some guys who have stepped up in the pitching department. But Gordo, really appreciate you coming on today. Giving your insight, and for anybody that wants to support you, whether it's on Twitter, whether it's your articles on Beyond the Monster, the Bradfo Show as well. Where can they find all that stuff?
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter. I'm Boston Sports Gordo on Twitter. The ad is BOS Sports Gordo. I do shows on the Bradfo Show once or twice a week with the Who Says No gang, and I write articles for Beyond the Monster. The team over there, Chris Henrik leads a really good squad. So yeah, find me all those places. I mean, Sox all day, every day. Let's do it. We got we're like 20 something games into the year, so we got 140 left. Like, Let's get it. We got
Yes,
we got a whole lot of baseball ahead of us.
I'm so hyped, man. Glad I was able to have you on, and definitely going to have you on again, but appreciate it, man. I hope that you did enjoy my conversation with Gordo and got a little bit of some insight on different moves that we could potentially see down the line, not only regarding Brayan Bello, what's going to happen with Chang if he's placed on the IL. Could we see David Hamilton come up? What's going to happen with Caleb Ort? If potentially, Brayan Bello gets called up, all these different things. But, luckily, different guys are coming back from injuries, and I think the best thing right now is more injuries aren't stacking up, knock on wood. But I hope that you did enjoy my conversation with Gordo, and we're going to continue to have more Red Sox Twitter or Red Sox fans personalities on in the future. One thing that I really like to do on this podcast is not only bring on players, beat reporters, but also bring the fans on as well to really be able to help give the audience a wide range of different opinions to help them be as knowledgeable as possible and hear a lot of different perspectives. But, if you want to hear even more perspectives and different perspectives from an actual Red Sox player tomorrow, I know my everydayers always check in and see each and every single day which episode is going to be coming out. And we want to thank you so much for making Locked On Red Sox your first listen of every single day. But for my everydayers, tomorrow's episode is with Jarren Duran. We did a short interview with Duran talking a little bit about how his approach has changed from last year to this year, not only physically, but mentally. And he gives some great answers in the interview. So definitely make sure to check that out tomorrow. But if you want to also stay updated on everything that is happening surrounding the podcast, make sure to follow us over on Twitter. It's LO_Red Sox. I actually put out a poll on which two player interviews you guys would like to hear. And, I did that 2 days ago, and Jarren Duran was the number one pick. And so if you want to be more involved in, the different decisions regarding the podcast, like those types of things, or also join and share your opinions over on Twitter. There's a lot of times where in each episode we talk about your opinions or your replies over on Twitter. So if you want to be involved in some episodes in the future, make sure to go over and give us a follow over there. Also follow myself over on Twitter. It's at Jake Iggy, and also my co-host Lauren is three laws, Lauren with 4 R's. But we greatly appreciate everybody tuning in as always. I hope that you have a great rest of your day. But we'll end this episode how we always end it. Keep the faith, stay positive, and let's go Sox. Peace.